Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to do part 2 of day 1 Timeless decks. So kind of putting some ideas onto a page, trying to do the deck building. As I mentioned in the other videos, I'm not claiming to be tier 1. I'm not doing like this is the top tier meta breaking. These are general ideas, kind of concepts, ports of concepts from Legacy, Modern, whatever it may be. And then just kind of interject some of the unbalanced cards, the broken banned cards, the always restricted cards, and just trying to see what we can build. The one thing I will say, great conversation in the comments in the other video, lots to think of. This is a puzzle right now. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to approach things. I know I posed a question about like brainstorm into a bowmaster meta in the last one, and there's a lot of great dialogue there. Someone brought it up in the comments, and I kind of wanted to ask it on the onset. Demonic Tutor, it is restricted. It is a one of. Do you auto include Demonic Tutor in every deck you play? So even if you're playing a bunch of 4-ofs, stuff like that, do you play a Demonic Tutor just for the sake of playing Demonic Tutor? Or is it more of a card that you would play in, say, a combo deck or something with a bunch of silver bullets that you would play in? So I welcome that thought. I could be wrong. The one thing I might say as well, some of the lists that I posted for the first one, I think we can get away with playing more fetches. The more I look at the formats in like Modern and stuff, they usually play like 12 plus fetches. So that could be something that we look at going forward, just to kind of see how it plays out. But that's kind of my initial thoughts. Again, I welcome all the feedback. I'm not claiming these decks are perfect. This is a great opportunity for everyone to kind of come together, share ideas, and us learn together. I will try to get a gameplay of some of these decks Tuesday when the format comes live, and then we can kind of work things through as we kind of go through there and play some games. I'm really excited for this format, if you can't tell, but we're going to look at 5 other decks today. As always, if you have cool ideas, drop it in the comments, but we are going to start with some Timeless Nexus of Fate. And I've been vocal that Nexus of Fate is the deck that I least personally enjoy playing against. I hate this deck, but in the interest of being diverse, we are showing. So there's some cards that we don't have the format yet. So just as a note, this is Dig Through Time. So playing 2 Dig Through Times, 2 Memory Deluge. And I think this is the correct way because we're also playing Uro. I didn't want to compete with the graveyard. Like contentious with Uro exiling cards as well as Dig Through Time, and I think Deluge has some utility as well. Both get around the draw condition, which I do like. So playing this over something like Treasure Cruise. We are a Brainstorm deck, so we do have access. I'm playing 8 fetches. Again, it might need to be 12. As we go through the format, we would learn a little bit more, but I welcome your thoughts here. Should I be playing 12 fetches? If so, that's a pretty easy change. Just cut some of the like searchable lines and we kind of go from there. Counterspell package of Memory Lapse and Counterspell, just as ways to kind of bounce. Playing a 1 of Cyclonic Rift, this can be in a pinch just to reset your opponent's board. You generate a lot of mana in this deck with Wilderness Reclamation, like end step, put your stop, float your mana, untap, float your mana. So even with like 4 lands, you can overload Rift. This can deal with pesky permanents, stuff like that. Teferi is a bit of a pain in this deck, so it's something we want to be mindful of as we kind of play through. Oko's in here, Uro's in here because they're very good, and then a 1 of Shark Typhoon as one of your win conditions, along with the Planeswalker and the Euros, and then the Nexus of Fate. So kind of the core of this deck is you just keep taking turns over and over and over again, drawing through a bunch of cards, getting cards to your hand, and just kind of trying to win through that route. The mana base, some Hall of the Storm Giants, as well as a Myrex as some of the win conditions. I think Myrex is something interesting that I do want to try out in this type of shell. In the past, it was just kind of like scrying, search for a Scanta type things, but if you can make a token every turn, this also gets around like life gain or stuff like that. And then a castle to kind of help you find your stuff, the Seiju, and then just some Ketria's Triumphs to cycle. If you flood out, you can draw some cards with that. The sideboard, Mystical Disputes for the counterspell matchups, Tishana's Tidebinder as a way to screw up activated abilities. I just want to do this on a fetch line to kind of stifle it that way. Against heavy counterspell decks, or sorry, not counterspell, discard decks, Tamiyo saw play at times. This might be too slow for the format, but something interesting to kind of see. Soul Guide Lantern for Graveyard Hate. So Wilt used to be played in these decks as the artifact enchantment hate choice. This can blow up Blood Moon. It has the upside of cycling, so when you're comboing off, if you don't need it, you can just get rid of it. A lot of lists also just play extra copies of Beseju in the mana base, so that's something also to consider. Just kind of seeing from there. We have Narsets for the kind of control matchups, shut off card draws. And this one's a little unorthodox. I'm thinking there's a lot of counterspells in this format. I feel like post board there's going to be even more, especially into like Teferi, stuff like that. Because we are Simic, we don't have clean answers. And it might be better ultimately to go Temur with this deck, so you get Unholy Heat, you get Bolt, stuff like that. But Carnage Tyrant's uncounterable and can't be targeted by Swords to Plowshare or any of the removal of like blue-white X decks. Can't be turned into an Elk by Oko, so just a big chunky attacker post board. Whereas things like Shark Typhoon just gets hit by any of the cheap removal, stuff of that nature. That's my thoughts. It might be too cute, but I was trying to figure out like what's the best way post board in a heavy counterspell deck. Then we go to kind of the Delver of the format, Delverless Delver. So this is going to be Treasure Cruise in this slot here. So Modern has like blue-red, blue moon decks that they call them. They did pretty well, like the Murktide decks. We don't have Murktide in the format. And then some of the Legacy decks also play Questing Druid in here. So my thought was Temur Black. And we have Baubles, Brainstorms in here, Dragon Rage Chandler, Lightning Bolt, Unholy Heat. So just a lot of like the busted cards. Ragavan, Deathrite Shaman. I went 3 Ragavan just because it was a legendary. I've never actually played in paper with Ragavan, so I don't know if it's just auto always a 4. But I was trying to like find space in the deck. We're already at 18 lands, which seems to be where a lot of these Delver style decks are. I think in part because we have Deathrite Shaman, it adds a lot of utility, ramping us, Graveyard Hate, and stuff like that. Questing Druid's card advantage gets bigger, memory lapse. So the general consensus of how I approach this is in 3 color decks, and this is technically a 4 color deck, and then more kind of aggressively slanted deck. I like lapse better, especially with Ragavan, because you can steal a card off their library. In more controlling shells, I like counterspell better. So kind of the consensus of how I'm approaching this. Oko's in here. Because we're on Treasure Cruise, I'm not playing Uro. I think you want to be maybe like one approach of it. Like we're more kind of prowess, tempo oriented deck. So I think the Treasure Cruise is better. Here again, I'm on 8 fetches. I don't know if I need to be on 12. But we're already 18 lands, so it's pretty low, all things considered, like in terms of hits. I went 2 of each of the kind of dual lands in the Temur colors, one of Blood Crypt. We are more red than anything for the 1-drops, especially with Seek the Beast, so I went with that. The black is just for Deathrite Shaman's second ability. And then Forest and Island, just in case of Blood Moon, I can play around and cast all my other spells. Blood Moon, we don't really care about red because it just casts our stuff, and then it Beseju in the mana. The sideboard, I went with Spell Pierces, Veil of Summers as kind of protection counters. Roiling Vortex is a thought if like Nexus or like Life Gain kind of control decks, if like Omnath Piles, stuff like that gets played. Again, might be too cute, might be just play full 4 of Veil of Summers. The sideboards is more just me theory crafting what type of cards I might want. Similarly, if there's like heavy Storm style decks, the Cindervines is pretty good. Fry. So the problem is, Fry will deal with like a Teferi, it'll deal with most threats. It won't deal with Uro or Oko. The only really thing we can do is Burning Hands outside of our already 4 Unholy Heats. So I was thinking Fry maybe, again, maybe not. Some Disputes in here. So it's like, you're basically gonna have like your counterspell protection package, some removal in there. Tishana's Tidebinder again for activated abilities, Klothys for Graveyard Hate, and then 4 mana Minsc and Boo in the side for the grindier matchup. 18 lands in Minsk might be a little interesting, but we have Brainstorm, we have DRC kind of mixed into here. The one card that like Delighted Halfling, I don't think this is a Delighted Halfling deck. You're not playing tons of legendaries. You're not really ramping up per se. I think you're playing more of the tempo game. Again, this very well could be built as a Izzet Blood Moon deck, but I think the Deathrite Shaman's pretty like really good in this format, especially with all the fetch lands. I think Questing Druid's really good. I think Oko's worth playing, so I think going Temur is the route there. That is that. Then we will go to Timeless Money Pile. This was kind of an idea of the old modern decks. Just greed, spend all those wild cards. Okay, so Swords to Plowshare. Really, really good removal spell. Brainstorms, Unholy Heats. Just scalable removal, hits a bunch of things. Delighted Halfling and Deathrite Shaman as our accelerant package. In this deck, I'm more inclined to play the Delighted Halfling because we have Teferi, Oko, and Uro in here, as well as Omnath. So just lots of ways to kind of interact. This one, we're playing Counterspell. We have the One Ring in here, which is also something that can become uncounterable thanks to Delighted Halfling. A Minskin Boo in the main. Lorien Revealed helps us find lands, as well as Leyline Binding, which is really a 1-mana removal spell. So the deck kind of curves out like this in theory. And it's just like every powerful card. We have Omnaths, Yorion can blink stuff. We have Field of the Dead in the mana base. This one I'm playing a bunch of fetches. I'm playing 10. We have a bunch of the Triomes in here. So most of the modern decks I looked at that are 4-colored don't play this many Triomes. But I think with Deathrite Shaman, we want access to more black. So I think it's reasonable. And for the most part, like, I think we can get away with it. Like turn 1, you fetch like untapped. Lorien Revealed can hit it, and then just playing a number of basics. So again, just considerations for Blood Moon, especially because we're a greedier mana base. 1 plains casts everything. I want 2 islands to cast Counterspell, as well as Escape Uro, and then 2 forests, similar fashion in that regard. Our sideboard. Come on, Arena. Veil of Summer, Protection and Counterspell. Spring Verdict as a sweeper. Stern Scolding as a cheap counterspell for creature decks. Lurrus decks, stuff like that. Soul Guide Lantern for Graveyard Hate. Dovin's Veto for counters. March of Otherworldly Lie as kind of a port of Prismatic Omen. Especially deals with like Blood Moon. Just flexible card. Hits a bunch of things. And then Boseiju. Just as extra artifact enchantment hate kind of mixed into there. So that is my money pile. Budget friendly, only 19,000 rares and mythics. The next deck is mono black, pretty much mono black, and I wanted to play Dark Ritual in the deck. So I thought kind of porting over, we don't have Cabal Coffers, but in Modern there's the Cabal Coffers deck. But this is a Karn deck. We have a Karn Wishboard. Dark Ritual can accelerate us into Karn much earlier. We have Necropotence in here. This version I am playing a Demonic Tutor because we are a Karn package as well. We have a bunch of 1-ofs. But Cling to Dust for Graveyard Hate, main, some life gain, Fatal Push, Thoughtseizes, Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite Shaman, I have access to some green mana just for its supplementary ability, just to eat Uros and Okos. Troll to help us find lands. I went with 1 Necropotence. Admittedly, I've never played this card as well. Like in Construction, outside of the Golgari Storm deck, where the redundant copies don't really matter. I think One Ring is better with Shieldred than the Necropotence because this is just put into your hand at the beginning of the end step. You don't draw the card, meaning you don't gain the life off Shieldred, and I think we're a little risky to just pay 7 each time without gaining the life. One Ring plays nicely with Shieldred. Invoke Despair sees play in some of the Coffer decks. I think it could be reasonable. We could Dark Ritual into it like as early as turn 2, which is impressive. We get 2 copies. We don't have Damnation, so I thought Ritualist Soot just as having access to Sweeper in the main. And then Bowmasters. Eliminate is a card I think could have legs in this format. Where Shieldred's Edict, doesn't let you target. I think I want to have a clean answer for like an Uro, an Oko, a Teferi, just answering those threats in that respect. Field of Ruins, 8 fetches that enable Revolt, also feeds Deathrite Shaman, bunch of swamps, and a Takanuma in here. Could play maybe a creature land like a Hive of the Eye Tyrant. I don't know where the format's going to land with creature lands. That's the only thing. With the advent of fetches, it seems like a lot of them have shifted off to creature lands from like looking at modern deck lists. Sideboard, because we have Cage, we have Grafdigger's Cage for any sort of graveyard shenanigans, Pithing Needle for activated abilities, Defense Grid for heavy counterspell based decks, Liquid Metal Coating with Karn, we could shut off activated abilities and just blow up lands, Stone Brain for combo, Cityscape Leveler. I don't know if we're going to generate enough mana to cast Leveler, since we're not a Nykthos deck, we're not a Coffers deck, but I wanted to try it out to see. Chalice of the Void, you can Chalice and put it on 1 for a lot of these decks. Like imagine that Dragon Rage Chandler deck that I just showed, the Temur deck, shut off a lot of its stuff. It hits our stuff too, but I think in those formats you shut off more of your opponent's deck, so you're fine. Graveyard Hate on demand with Tormod's Crypt, Haywire Might for artifact enchantments, Shealder's Edict just as more kind of removal that hits Planeswalkers, and then Leyline of the Void for any sort of graveyard deck. And then the last one's kind of a wild one. So I saw this kind of idea from BFits88 from MTGO in November. They went 5-0 in Modern. I wanted to build a Winota deck. And there's obviously like Winota you can do with Crucius, you can do to big things, to Agent of Treachery. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, but this one seemed really cool. It was a Winota deck that fetches Yawgmoth combo pieces. Yawgmoth is a human, as well as Hapatra is a human. You're incidentally playing non-humans in like Delighted Halfling. This version, they play Grist. We don't have Grist, so I'm playing the Young Wolf that gets the loop. Orcish Bowmaster makes tokens that can also find combo pieces. Playing a Blood Artist, as well as Zulaport. Zulaport can be fetched since it's human. And then Deathrite Shaman, because it's going to be very good in this format. And Court of Calling to kind of find you your combo pieces. Agatha Soul Cauldron can mimic the Yawgmoth ability. This one I'm playing 12 fetches, just a bunch of duels. Kalani Garden as well for the tokens that can be used for the Yawgmoth combo. The sideboard, Thoughtseize for Hand Hate, Soulless Jailer for kind of the Grafdigger's Cage effect. We're not casting cards from the graveyard. Cage shuts off our ability from the library, which I don't want. So this way we kind of eat at their graveyard. Pylon basically could be a free removal spell in this deck. Haywire Might for artifact enchantment hate. Graph Reaver as a way that we can tutor a creature that can blow up a planeswalker like Oko. Graveyard Hate and Scavenging Ooze. Peddler as cheaper creature, like just more hand disruption that I like. It's combos, stuff like that. We can tutor for it. And then a Cabal versus any Storm decks, any Nexus of Fate style strategies, stuff of that nature. So this one I'm actually like really interested to try this one out. This one seems fun. Just a different kind of take on Winota. I just didn't want to do the Naya Winota turn 3, try to get a bunch of big humans into play. I want it to be lower to the ground and try to play more broken stuff. So that is it for 5 more decks. Let me know what you think. Welcome feedback again. And we'll see you Tuesday. Try out a bunch of these things. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one and stay safe out there.